Good morning, class. In the previous period, we were discussing about the chapter 10, My Dearest Lizzie, and half of the chapter we have discussed. This is an extract taken from the novel Pride and Prejudice, which is written by Jane Austen. And the theme of this chapter is neighborhood and community. When we have started discussing about this chapter, we have discussed that in this extract, the author is talking about a girl, Jane, who went to Netherfield to meet a person, and on her way, she got wet because of the heavy rain. Then she wrote a letter to her family informing them about her illness and how she was treated over there. And on receiving that letter, one of the sisters, Elizabeth, decided to go to Zen and see how she was. And she started her journey along with her two sisters, Catherine and Lydia. But Catherine and Lydia stayed at Marathon, and the rest of the journey, Elizabeth continued alone. And finally, she reached to the house of Mr. Bingley, where her sister Jane was living. But by the time she reached there, her ankles were weary, her stockings were very dirty, and her face was glowing with the warmth of the exercise, with the warmth of all the efforts that she took to come from her place to meet her sister, because she walked throughout the way. She did not have any other alternative. So she decided to walk, and she walked through the way to meet her sister. This much we have discussed in the last class. Now, what happened when she reached to that place? So, we will start discussing that today. She was shown into the breakfast parlor where all but Jane were assembled, and where her appearance created a great deal of surprise. So finally, when she reached to that house, and when she entered the house, what was going on there? All of them were having the breakfast. The members of that family were having the breakfast, and it was very surprising for all of them when they saw Elizabeth. Why? Because it was so early in the morning, because they all were having the breakfast, and keeping in mind the poor weather condition, it was not easy for someone to uh, cover such a distance within a time. That she should have walked 3 miles so early in the day in such dirty weather and by herself means she did not have any carriage, she did not have any vehicle, she walked throughout the way, was almost incredible to Mrs. Hurst and Miss Bingley. These were the ladies in the family, Mrs. Hurst and Miss Bingley, and they were quite surprised of the action of Elizabeth. And Elizabeth was convinced that they held her in contempt for it. Although none of them said anything like that, none of them expressed anything like that, but the situation in which Elizabeth was there, she thought that every person in that family was considering her act very useless. All the people in the family who all were there, Mrs. Hurst, Miss Bingley, they all were considering the act of Elizabeth as useless. But this was presumed by Elizabeth. This was not actually their thinking. So, what is the meaning of contempt? Contempt means disregard of something that should be considered. So, from the viewpoint of Elizabeth, she was assuming that the people there were considering her act as useless, but the people over there who were sitting for the breakfast were so much surprised by the act of Elizabeth, but they were not regarding it as useless. She was received, however, very politely by them. They welcomed her very politely, keeping in mind her condition that she walked 3 miles. And in their brother's manners, there was something better than politeness. Means the men in the family, they were more polite. There was good humor and kindness, means they started the conversation, and in the conversation there was kindness and humor. Mr. Darcy said very little, and Mr. Hurst nothing at all. The two men were there, Mr. Darcy and Mr. Hurst. So Mr. Darcy said very little, he spoke but very less, and Mr. Hurst did not say anything. The former was divided between admiration of the brilliancy which exercise had given to her complexion and doubt as to the occasions justifying her coming so far alone. Now, here it is written the former was divided. The former means here they are talking about the opinion of the Mr. Darcy. Though he did not express his opinion, he was just thinking about the two things, the admiration, the praise of that girl who walked 3 miles in such a bad weather to reach to that place to meet her sister, and secondly that what was this actually useful, was it actually needed, as when she was about to start her journey, when Elizabeth was actually about to start her journey at her place, her sister Mary asked her that the risk that you are taking, the risk that you are going to take, would it give you the equal result? So, same thing here. Mr. Darcy was also thinking that what was the point of coming? What was the point of taking so much risk? The later was thinking only of his breakfast. The later means Mr. Hurst did not think anything about the girl who just came. He was just thinking about his breakfast. Her inquiries after her sister were not very favorably answered. Now, Elizabeth came there for a purpose to meet her sister, to see how her sister was. So, she asked to the ladies of the family about her sister, but her queries were not answered favorably, means she was not satisfied with the answers given by the ladies. Miss Bennet had slept ill and though up was very feverish and not well enough to leave her room. What did they say? Miss Bennet means Jen was slept ill, she was sleeping, she was ill, and she had fever, and she was not in a condition to move out of her room. This is what was explained or what was informed to Elizabeth. Elizabeth was glad to be taken to her immediately, and Jane, who had only been withheld by the fear of giving alarm or inconvenience from expressing in her note how much she longed for such a visit, was delighted at her entrance. So, now what was the next action? The ladies took the Elizabeth to her sister to see Jane. How was she? And what was the reaction of the Jane? She was very happy. She was very much surprised. Although, when she wrote the letter to her family, she was also worried that what would be their reaction, how they care about her. But when Jane saw Elizabeth, she was very relaxed and she was very happy to see her sister there. She was not equal, however, to much conversation. Means she was not in a condition to have much of the conversation. She was not able to speak very much as she was not well. And when Miss Bingley left them together, could attempt little besides expression of gratitude for the extraordinary kindness she was treated with. Elizabeth attended to her silently. And why she was not able to speak or express her emotions? Because Mrs. Bingley was also there. When she left the two girls alone in the room, then Jen tried to speak a little and she expressed her thanks for the generousness, for the kindness that was shown by her sister for her, the care that was there in the heart of Elizabeth for her sister Jane.